The New York Knicks have won the NBA championship 4-1 against the Spurs, in a series where San Antonio played some of their worst basketball of the entire season and blew a double-digit lead in every game that they lost. So what exactly led to this Spurs collapse? Well, firstly, we need to talk about De'Aaron Fox. He had by far the worst performance out of any player in this series, and arguably one of the worst finals ever. De'Aaron Fox had the same issues throughout. Bad shot selection, lazy passes late in games, and terrible IQ plays. Primarily in Game 4, where he opted to take a contested layup on OG Anunoby instead of guaranteeing a win for his team by dribbling out the clock. Dylan Harper easily played better than De'Aaron Fox and should have started over him, or at least closed the game over Fox. It's very clear that Dylan Harper has been upset with his role with the team, and it's clear to see why. Comparing the two's numbers in the finals, you can see that Dylan Harper has easily been the better player, averaging far more points and rebounds on way better efficiency, and Dylan Harper is doing this on 5 less minutes per game. To really emphasize the difference between the two, here are the per 36 minute stats of both Dylan Harper and De'Aaron Fox in these finals. And this really highlights the impact that Dylan Harper had and how much more value he could have potentially brought to the Spurs, especially in the fourth quarter of games, as that was when the Spurs played at their worst. Now, even though De'Aaron Fox has been very bad, I don't see him getting traded, at least not until next season. Instead, what the Spurs should do is start Dylan Harper over Fox. And even though De'Aaron Fox, being a 10-year vet, would not like that moving to the bench, it might be better overall for the Spurs, as Dylan Harper is only going to get better and has already proven to be better than De'Aaron Fox when it matters the most. And Dylan Harper has been upset with his playing time and his role in the series, so this really is going to come down to whether or not Mitch Johnson is comfortable enough benching De'Aaron Fox. The next thing I want to talk about is Victor Wembanyama and his energy level. Throughout the series, he's been great in the first half of games, but when the second half comes around, Wemby always seems gassed, and that leads him to making bad plays. In Game 4 in the second half, it was clear that Wemby was at least a little bit tired, as he kept settling for bad three-pointers and looked afraid to attack the basket, even when the Spurs were in the bonus and the Knicks were in foul trouble. I do want to give props to the Knicks though for holding Wemby to just 42% shooting from the field in this series, which was down about 9% from his average field goal percentage in the first 3 series of the playoffs. Fatigue was definitely an issue, and you could see it in the way Victor just carried himself on the court. Now, this is probably more of a coaching issue, if anything, because Mitch Johnson had several opportunities to take Wemby out of the game when the Spurs were up big. And with just Luke Cornett being the only other rotational big man, and the fact that he isn't that good, Wemby is essentially forced to stay in the game for long stretches of time. San Antonio's next tallest player is just 6'7", so they need a third big man to come into the game who can keep the Spurs' head above water while Wemby gets rest. Now, there aren't a ton of great free agents, as the best realistic options consist of Jackson Hayes, Mark Williams, Andre Drummond, and DeAndre Ayton if he declines his player option, which he probably won't. So the Spurs could make a trade for a backup center. I think a great option would be Jonas Valanciunas of the Denver Nuggets. He's a solid defender and he's very efficient in the pick and roll, which would be very valuable for the Spurs off the bench. A potential trade would involve Jonas Valanciunas going to the Spurs for Kelly Olynyk, the Hawks' 2027 unprotected first-round pick, and the Spurs' own 2029 unprotected first-round pick as well. If the only player the Spurs are going to trade is Kelly Olynyk, I could definitely see the Nuggets wanting more draft compensation, but this would give the Spurs a solid backup center who can definitely give the Spurs extra time to rest Wemby without the risk of giving up a massive run. The next thing I want to bring up is the Spurs' lack of three-point shooting. They shot fairly well from 3 in the first 3 rounds of the playoffs, but against the Knicks, they were noticeably worse from 3, and this is probably a factor of fatigue and the Spurs taking bad shots because they had a good lead, but they should still aim to get more consistent shooters, as the only good shooters for them in the finals were Julian Champagnie, who shot 40% from 3 for the series, and Devin Vassell, who shot 47% from 3. Outside of these two, every other rotational player for the Spurs didn't shoot the ball that well. Again, fatigue is probably an issue, but you need a player that can come into the game that can knock down threes when your starters aren't on the floor. I really like a trade for Tim Hardaway Jr., where he goes to San Antonio for Mason Plumlee and 2 first-round picks. Mason Plumlee is literally the only player it makes sense to trade. If the Spurs did the trade for Valanciunas like I mentioned before, then the only other player that they could trade for Tim Hardaway would be Carter Bryant. But I don't see a world where the Spurs trade their lottery pick rookie for a 34-year-old. The fourth and final thing I want to mention is this team's youth. The Spurs have an average age of just 26.8 years old, making them one of the youngest teams in the league, and the trio of Victor Wembanyama, Stephon Castle, and Dylan Harper average out to just 21 years old. The Spurs' best players are all only going to improve, so to be honest, they don't need to do anything extreme. What would serve San Antonio best would be to keep their young core together and let them naturally develop their games. Wemby had people calling him the best player in the world, and he's only 22 years old. Imagine how much better he would be when he's 26 and has Stephon Castle and Dylan Harper entering the start of their primes. Along with these three, Devin Vassell is just 25, Keldon Johnson, the 6th man of the year, is 26, Julian Champagnie is 24, and Carter Bryant is just 20. Genuinely, they don't need to make any moves if they really didn't want to. They have some finals experience so early on, and they will have several more deep playoff runs as a group over the next couple of seasons. This Spurs team is one of the brightest young cores we have seen throughout NBA history. Every young all-time great has had to get beat down before they break through and finally win a championship. LeBron got swept by the Spurs in 2007 and flamed out against Dallas in 2011. Michael Jordan was getting bounced in the first round at the start of his career, and Shaq had to lose to Hakeem in the finals before winning. The only real exception to this is Magic Johnson, who carried his team to a title in the finals after Kareem got injured. I'm bringing these up because Wemby is right on the path of every all-time great, and people making it seem that the Spurs are in trouble or discounting them are all wrong. Losing early in your career is almost a rite of passage for a young player before they become great. And even though the Spurs do have some issues with their team, I would not be surprised to see them in the finals next season, because that's how good this team really is. That's the end of this video. If you enjoyed, please be sure to like and subscribe as it helps me out a ton, and be sure to comment below your thoughts on the Spurs. And be sure to check out my last video where I ranked the previous 10 NBA champions. And if you made it this far into the video, I truly appreciate you, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.